You can debate how much a lack of a regional transit system, or even a regional transit plan for that matter, had to do with Detroit not making the finalist round in the Amazon sweepstakes, but to many, it remains a glaring hole in the Southeast Michigan resume. Now, Patterson will tell you he doesn't represent Southeast Michigan, he represents Oakland County. So is that it? Do people like Wayne County Executive Warren Evans now have to move on without some of the Detroit suburbs, or do they just need to make a better case? Both L. Brooks Patterson and Warren Evans are here this morning to hash it out. And the golden opportunity that is the design of the West Riverfront Park. We are down to the finalists, and we'll have a look at them this morning on Flashpoint. If I had $1 for every time we've talked about a regional transit system on this program, I think I could afford to build a regional transit system. In his remarks Wednesday night, Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson pretty much shut the door on the model many have believed was the best way forward, one that basically demanded everyone pay their part and be a part of a regional transit authority. Well, where does that leave us? Brooks Patterson is here this morning, and so is the Wayne County Executive, Warren Evans. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here. Brooks, let me start with you. I think you made your case pretty clearly, cleanly the other night. Here was Mayor Duggan's response and take, because he felt a little betrayed, I think you'd have to say. While I would have preferred the courtesy of Patterson just telling us honestly he couldn't support regional transit, at least now we no longer have any illusions about his position on the issue. Someday, Southeastern Michigan will join the rest of America in recognizing the critical importance of regional transit, but it will take regional leaders to build a regional transportation system. What are your thoughts now after you've heard the reaction of a couple of days' worth since your address?
Well, I think Mike Duggan is a little disingenuous with that comment. I'm not against mass transit. I've been to the table. I've led the smart tax millage for, I think, 3 or 4 elections. I'm out there front saying, yeah, let's have. What I'm trying to explain to my voters and to the public is the law allows in Public Act 196 opt-out community, people who don't want to join. For way up north who will never see a bus and never have an opportunity or need to ride a bus, or on the west side of the state. I think Wayne's even got some opt-out communities. That's what the law allowed. And what they're saying now, because they failed, the advocates, to put a plan together, well, let's bring those opt-out communities into the plan, whether they like it or not. Drag them in, you know, screaming, we opted out and we want to stay out. They can always come in if they want, but right now, and that's the position. I'm the county exec. I'm not going to sneak in under cover of darkness and drag them in, even though those properties would represent about close to $1 million. I'm sorry, $1 billion. $1 billion. Yeah.
Warren, your thoughts? How do you? It's not quite what he's talking about. Is not quite taxation without representation, but it is taxation without a desire to be a part of something.
Well, you know, if folks in Oakland and Macomb don't want to be in it, they don't want to be in it. But through our talks, and we've been working, his staff, Macomb, Detroit, and this for since April, they've been meeting. And we've been working through what we thought were the deal breaker kinds of situations to try to work through them. And so, what Mayor Duggan's saying, and I'm saying too, is we thought a few weeks ago we had come to a conclusion that said we'll run a horizontal line, not we, they, through Macomb and Oakland, and above would be opt out and below wouldn't. I mean, it's about as regional as I thought we'd be able to get, because the sense was it wouldn't be supported otherwise, and the county execs there wouldn't be able to support it otherwise. That seems to have changed in the last couple of weeks to opt-out communities, which is opt-out, opt-in, donuts, cut holes. And the reality, at least in my mind, feel very strongly, is a regional plan's got to be regional. You can't go around cities and under cities and over. It's a regional transit, not unlike the zoo, not unlike COBO, not unlike the DIA, are regional tools that we need. And in those other instances, they're paid by everyone. Now, I don't know exactly what makes transit different, but if it's going to be a regional transit plan that moves people from one place to the other, then it needs to be a regional thing. If I never got on transit, I see a benefit to the region for it being there. Not just Amazon or whatever the next thing that comes along is, but while we're all looking, and And Brooks is a prime example of upgrading Oakland County in terms of talent, artificial intelligence, all those sorts of things. Well, the reality to me is regional transit, we're 20 years behind. And our ability to bring in people and do things is a regional issue. Now, if Oakland doesn't want in or Macomb doesn't want in, all I need to know is you don't want in. And we'll try to devise another plan that doesn't, encumber what they're trying to do.
This is the confusion. Oakland, half of Oakland, maybe 2/3 of it wants in. The 1/3 that opted out are absolutely solid that they don't want to participate. And I've
These
been
are
asked,
some big towns.
Oh yeah, that's Novi, Rochester Hills,
Novi.
Yeah, and they would generate, well over $1 billion, and contribute to the plan. But they're not likely to use a bus. They're not going to see a bus, not going to use it, and they say to themselves, "Why do we have to pay for it?"
Well,
so they opted out.
But in the same way that we ask senior citizens who don't go to schools to support schools, is there not an idea that there's a public good here that everybody has to support whether they avail themselves of it or not?
Sure. And I understand that argument very well, because I are a senior. But, we go back to transportation, however. Back in 1995, they drafted this transit plan for the Tri-County. It wasn't me. I wasn't even in, I guess maybe, no. I was
You were in junior high school.
I guess I just started as I said. The drafters, Lansing and whoever, created an opt-out provision. And now they're all angry because those communities opted out in their own best interest, saying, we don't need it, we don't want it, and we're not going to pay for it. So now they're saying, well, you got to get back in. Well, you shouldn't have created the opt-out provision to begin with if you weren't going to honor it.
A 25-year-old reality, perhaps, then, in that sense. Warren, your critics, I guess, those who maybe are siding with Brooks, say, look, you had your best bite of the apple that you were ever going to get a year and a half ago, the 2016 RTA vote. You didn't make your case, and your problem isn't just Brooks, but it was defeated by even a much wider margin in Macomb County.
Sure. The difference is it wasn't Brooks's plan, my plan, Duggan's plan, or Hackle's plan. That was the RTA's plan, and one of the reasons it failed was they never came to us early and said, what do you need to try to do to create a plan that's sellable? That's what we have been doing since April of last year, trying to get to that. Now, have we? I mean, obviously, I was in the second row while Brooks was talking the other night. I heard loud and clear what his position was. I would have hoped to have heard that position sooner so we could have moved left or right, but whatever it is, that's what it is. Let me just say, in the RTA bill, it clearly states that 85% of the dollars, whatever it generates, and there's no question that Oakland County generates a tremendous amount of that money. There's no question. And that's why it indicates that 85% of the dollars generated there must be used
in that county.
In that county. And so, I mean, it's not like, a rape by daylight. It is a part of a process that says, if we're going to have a regional plan and we're going to bring in folks, we need everybody in and we need to serve everybody. And this plan that we've been working on since April has far more in it for both Macomb and Oakland than the previous plan did. Now, whether it's satisfactory is a different issue.
Well, it may not be to Brooks, but to that because of that stipulation, 85% of the dollars stay in your county. Doesn't that give lie to the idea that I'm just creating a system for somebody else?
Well, I think this is where Duggan and perhaps my friend Warren thought I was supporting the plan. 85%, that was what I was excited about. We actually bargained people at the table, not 50%, but 85% of the money raised in Oakland State. Sure, that's where I was all for it. My hand was raised. And Warren just mentioned about the last meeting we had a map, we'd drawn a line around cities. In fact, I think Warren's traced it at one point. Yeah, he knew that there were cities that weren't going to participate. And we call those the opt-out communities. Maybe I wasn't clear enough.
I think you had about 30, right?
We have, I don't know which one of us has got the revisionist history here, but I remember it being a horizontal line going straight through both counties. Now, whether it was a little north of where we talk about it, or a little south, it did not create, going around communities. It chose which communities would be below or above.
Not quite the way you remember it.
Well, no, I remember the line being drawn, and I thought that was pretty clear. the line was saying, okay, those people up there are not in the plan, these people down here are in the plan.
To the broader issue, though, if Amazon, let's say, had selected Detroit, and it would have been in Detroit, that clearly would have been of great benefit to the whole region, right? I mean, don't we need to appreciate a regional approach here, that what's good for maybe one small area ends up benefiting a lot of us?
Yeah, I called, in fact, we participated in the plan. As you know, I didn't take my bat and ball and go home. we worked on it and tried to give them what we thought were our assets would be appealing to Amazon. And I called up, is it Matt Cullen? Mm-hmm. And I said to Matt a couple of days before the deal was on the table, I said, if transportation is an issue, tell them, since I have a seat on the smart board, we will rearrange all the smart routes. All the smart routes will go to headquarters, and that'll become our hub. We'll move it from wherever it is in Detroit, and the smart building in Detroit, every building that is, will become the hub for smart. So every transportation line would bring workers to Amazon. I thought we sort of mellowed out that issue by saying, hey, it's going to be your transport. Now, it's not a rail, but it's a heck of a lot more flexible than a fixed rail.
Warren, there are those who have criticized our entire approach to transit as being very antiquated, that we're still talking about things like buses, a new light rail system that is really a callback to 1940s travel in downtown Detroit, and that you're not being forward-thinking enough on your side of this to get people like Brooks and the people who live in Oakland and Macomb counties excited about something that's more future-thinking.
Well, I don't think that's true at all, and I don't even think they would necessarily agree with that. What we have now are buses that we have money to pay for, and the new plan has additional routes to both Oakland and Macomb. We get the technology part. In fact, one of the reasons to get a regional proposal now is so we can develop the plans to put in the queue, so at some point we get federal money to help with light rail and a number of the other things that need to happen. I mean, the truth of the matter is now we pay federal taxes too, not just the millage rate. And my question is, why are we building highways in Montana when some of that federal money could be coming back here to support the cost of light rail and some of the other parts of a regional plan? So this idea that it's bus-oriented is only, I mean, we're not the Jetsons. I mean, it's bus-oriented because we use buses now, but it's designed to grow with the technology and to do the things that need to happen in the future.
I got less than a minute left, but I want to leave with where you both are. Is it fair to say that you're at the point now where you're ready to move forward on transit without these other participants like Oakland County?
Never want to move without. Great respect for Brooks and others, and I think it's a regional issue. If we hit a wall where we can't have a regional plan because we have opt-outs, and
are we at that wall?
And that's well, I don't know. I keep trying to push. I keep trying to push the wall with my shoulder, but I think I certainly want to see some plan to start getting us in the queue to develop going forward.
I know I've got to challenge your major premise, move ahead without Oakland County. There's 62 communities in Oakland County. You're going to go ahead with all but 9. So it's not like we're not there and not supporting it.
Not altogether. Thank you both very much for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll continue.
Good Sunday morning. I'm meteorologist Andrew Humphrey. Winter weather advisory still in effect for Detroit and all of southeast Michigan until 4 p.m. There is some good news. I mean, some iciness is going to cut down on snow totals, but ice is still treacherous. The bigger thing is we got some dry air moving through, so we'll see a break in some of this rain and freezing rain, sleet, and snow action within the next few moments here in Detroit. Heavier snow up toward Port Huron. Still at least an inch has fallen since overnight last night in some areas north of the city, and we still have more moisture to move through, so we still have a chance of snowfall after noontime today.
Pretty much a blank canvas right now between the west edge of downtown and the Ambassador Bridge. What would you like to see there? How about a kayaking course and fishing areas? Maybe a riverfront amphitheater? Maybe a big green space designed for a lot of walking or biking? Well, all of those ideas and more were rolled out Thursday as the finalists made their pitches for the West Riverfront Park, and the head of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, Mark Wallace, back with us to now. We started this when you were first searching bids and ideas, and now we're down to the final 4. So great to have you back with us. That went really well last week on Thursday. I think everybody seemed really impressed at the quality quality of what was presented.
We were absolutely blown away. It was a really special moment for our community. This is a part of the riverfront that's been abandoned for a long time. People have sort of turned their backs to it. Very industrial use, and to think that we're going from a place that you had a couple of industrial workers every day to a place where millions of people can come every year. It's a really exciting opportunity.
That's why it's so rare to be able to remake part of your downtown at this level. My hunch is the firms that were all bidding to do this understood that too. This is a real high-level opportunity for them.
That's right. This is a really special moment, and I think that's why we got such amazing response from the teams. These are internationally renowned designers. The folks who did the High Line, the folks who designed Maggie Daly Park in Chicago. I mean, just people coming around from the world to look at Detroit and say, you've isolated this piece of property that's really valuable, and we're going to turn it into public space instead of turning it into more development. Really
extraordinary. It just doesn't happen. But let's take a look at some of what came through. First one, the bid from Gustafson Guthrie, which is a firm out of Seattle. And if you could just kind of highlight for me what you think is sort of the calling card of this idea.
This is just a beautiful park. Catherine Gustafson understands elevations. She's got this great idea that there should be a sunset view and a beautiful promenade that walks straight towards the Ambassador Bridge. So she really elevates that. If you've been in Maggie Daly Park or Millennium Park in Chicago, you've seen some of her gardens, and she's also just great at working with wildlife and natural features. So
nice.
Just a really remarkable genius.
Let's move to the next one, which is from Hood Design Studio, which is out of Oakland, California.
So Walter Hood has a really interesting concept, which is that the Detroit canopy has been eroded over time, the trees that surround our space and our streets and our neighborhoods. So his idea is to start by planting trees on the entire site, 44,000 trees, and that we would actually send those trees out into the neighborhoods. And as we pull trees up and relocate them to other parts of the city, the park would actually emerge. The spaces left behind would be the really special gathering places.
Oh, wow.
Really interesting concept, very participatory, and a lot of people could get involved with this.
We've talked about sort of the urban forestry movement. This would take it to a different level. Let's look at the one now from James Corner Field Operations. They're a firm out of New York.
Yeah, so James Corner came up with a really interesting idea. If you look at West Jefferson, and if you ever come down Rosa Park, so you're coming down 75 and going to the Joe Louis Arena, you've probably seen this big place, and there's a turn that makes a pretty quick turn coming just south of Lafayette.
Yeah.
Corner's idea is that the street edge should have a beautiful pavilion made out of wooden structure, and underneath that you can have a greenhouse, you can have a garden, you can have basketball courts, a lot of activity for places for people to come into that area. And then between that and the water, he has a series of hills and mounds, almost similar to Native American burial grounds. But as you're walking through those, your views of the river change, your experience of the wildlife changes as well. And then right at the river's edge, you have a 1 mile walking path or jogging path with a great playground.
Some really complex thinking that has gone into all of these so that it's kind of like that. And the last one, Michael Van Valkenburg Associates out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, outside Boston.
So Van Valkenburg did a really interesting thing. He took a big chunk out of the edge of the river and has turned it into this idea of a cove. So the idea that people want to be able to touch the water was an important driving force of his idea. He's also proposed a very large playground area that's designed to make you feel like you're in different parts of the state. So he has a sturgeon, but he also has a brown bear. He's proposing to build an island in the river. I mean, this is aspirational stuff. And one of the other great ideas Van Valkenburg brought is this idea of a big pavilion designed by one of the greatest architects in the world, an African architect who works out of England. And that would be a huge covered canopy, which could be a multi-use space, whether it's basketball, roller skating. You could bring a lot of different groups in to program that space. Yeah. So it's very inviting. That's right at the edge of Jefferson. So
now, I know even if you're watching those on a really big screen TV, it may be hard to appreciate them. There are mock-ups now of all of these ideas. And the next important part of this process is you taking part at looking at these and then voting. Explain how this is going to work.
That's right. We are driven by the community, and we're really stewards of the city of Detroit and the Metro Detroit region. So we want everyone to give us their opinions on these. And we've curated an exhibition at 1001 Woodward, right off the Q line stop at Campus Martius. So go down there, grab a sandwich, then walk across the street, It's beautiful. We have models that are almost as big as this table from each one of these designers. So you can literally sit down and you look at the miniature trees, which will be 30 feet when they're actually built. But it's a special spot. We're welcoming everyone, and we have opportunities for you to provide input to us, and we'll take that input and feed it back into the winning team.
Well, I was going to, how much weight does the public opinion have over this sort of Congress that you have, or this group that's going to make the decision?
The public is driving everything. We have to make a decision about the team, but in terms of what we build, that's still very open. We know that we want this to be a regional draw for recreation. We know we want it to be a place where people can interact with each other and demographic barriers come together. We know we want it to be a special place where kids are making memories, but aside from that, you can accomplish that in many different ways. So the feedback that we'll get on every one of the schemes will help inform us, and we'll take that feedback and give it back to the designers.
Now, I can see people walking through and saying, kind of viewing it as a cafeteria. I really like this idea here, but I really like the amphitheater idea of this, and I like the kayak over here. Is there a way to sort of create an amalgamation of all these great ideas?
It's a great question, and it's one of the things that's difficult. That's the reason it's good to have really strong design teams leading this process, because you don't want to make it, you don't want to make it a smorgasbord where you walk down, you sit down, and you're like, wait, I have 2 bites of this and 4 bites of this. It doesn't work. We need some unifying idea to guide the entire thing. We also want to be very sure that we're not competing with Belle Isle, we're not competing with Clark Park. Police Athletic League is doing great work just up the street from us. We want to fit into that system so that we're enhancing the opportunities both on the river and in the park ecosystem here in Detroit.
It needs to complement what's around it rather than sort of collide, but that's also true of the Riverwalk itself, which you've worked on. It needs to fit into that piece as well.
Yeah, the Riverwalk has a great series of public spaces. They're all relatively small and episodic, but they feel great. And this will be our first opportunity to do something which is massive in scale.
Yeah. Now, what's the time frame here? Are we looking at it? Because that'll be the frustrating part of this. You'd like to pick it and then have it done, in the next 3 or 4 days.
We'd like to flip a light switch and turn it on. Yeah, everything we do is dependent on fundraising, and also we want to go through a very appropriate community process. So we're hoping to finalize our selection in the spring. Make that announcement with the public, and then, as I said, go through several months of community engagement to make sure that everyone is bought into this idea and everyone's excited about it. As we're doing that, we'll be working on fundraising and identifying resources to make this happen.
In much the way that the Riverwalk itself has sort of developed.
Well, and if you look at it, Matt Cullen is one of my heroes. He's our board chair. You think about what he did. I mean, he looked out and saw industrial wasteland. He saw factories that were employing a couple people every day. And he said, the public belongs there. This should be a place for families and kids. And through the force of will, with a couple images and a lot of conversations, he changed a lot of people's minds and has transformed this into a place that we can all be proud of.
Absolutely has, and this is the next big piece of it. Mark, thanks so much for being here to talk about it. We will wrap things up for Flashpoint right after this. So starting tomorrow, you can head to 1001 Woodward there right along Campus Martius. Have a look at these ideas for West Riverfront Park and make your vote count. Thanks so much for being here. Olympic coverage gets underway at 3 p.m. here on Local 4. Meet the Press is next. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Flashpoint.